Good evening. Man, I'll tell you, I love my boy Arnie Jones. He always does such a great show. Here I am. I'm supposed to be prepping for my show, and I just get sucked into his stuff, man. My boy Arnold does such a great job. Um, for those of you guys that are out there, my name's Chappy. I run this Chaps Fantasy Chat thing, which is more fun than you can imagine. It's more work and headache than you could also imagine, but God, it's worth it at the end. So, I always try and think outside the box when I'm preparing for my shows. So, I love listening to Arnie talk about pitching tonight. Tonight, I thought I'd take a little pivot off of what we've been talking about, and here we are. We're a month out, a little less than a month out, and we need to start really nailing these lists down, right? You guys know I'm a big list guy, but what I decided to do for tonight's show is take a little bit different approach, right? Let's talk about, first off, I just want to take a second. You're listening to the Chaps Fantasy Chat. I'm brought to you on the Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports Network at LennyMelnickFantasySports.com. As this show goes on, you'll hear me interacting with folks. I'm interacting in our chat group online. If you go to the website I just said, you have such great baseball minds in here that you can interact with. You can ask questions to. You don't necessarily need my opinion. Maybe you want to hear from the legend or Andrea. It's just such great company to be able to share with you guys my point of view every week. And I really appreciate having you all here. So, currently we have Andrea, Arnie, George, Lenny, Vic, and guest Heather. Thank you guys for showing up live in the chat room. I really appreciate it. So, here we are. Again, Lenny nailed it. When you do your lists, you need to take into account tiers, and you need to take into account each category. So what I do, and I did this last year, I do this every year, is after I've gotten this initial list, we've gone through this initial list of players, I like going back and looking at last year's stats and talking about real physical numbers. I'm a stats guy, right? So, what are we talking about? I'm going to start you guys out with a trivia question. How many guys hit 40 homers last year? Seems like in the juice ball era, that's a fair starting point, right? So, I'll give you guys a minute to discuss amongst yourselves. But I think it's interesting because we're not just talking statistics here. We're not just talking straight numbers. What we're doing here, these numbers, they happened, right? It shows what these players are capable of. It's an indicator. It shows what players can grow into, right? So in this list, we talk about guys like Matt Olson, Juan Soto, Eloy Jimenez, who had pretty good base numbers, but have so much more potential. And it helps us create that baseline. I talked about it last year. I'm going to talk about it again this year. When we're drafting our draft, we want to try and establish a baseline across all of our counting categories, whether it be homers, stolen bases, what have you. And we want to get as many guys above that stat line as we can, right? So we're doing a number of things here. First off, it's fun to recount, right? But second off, it's using these numbers for a benefit that's going to help us later on, okay? So, yeah, you're right, Andy 9. You have 8 position players and Nelson Cruz, right? So, really not that many, right? 40 is a pretty big number. But in the juice ball era, in the juice ball era, you really would have thought it's more. Now, here's the kicker. When you go from 39 to 30, how many players do you think are in that grouping? Because that's what's really interesting. So we're talking about separating the pretty good from the really, really good, right? That's what this exercise is. And you're going to have people in both categories on both sides of this ledger. So, who are they? The 40 homer guys, Alonso 53, Suarez 49, Bellinger 47, Trout 45, Acuna 44, and Bregman, Arenado, and Acuna 41. So, again, 8 players isn't much. If you can get 2 guys from this category going into this year, you're in pretty good shape, right? Now, in a 12-team league, if you're trying to get 2 of these guys and there's only 8 of them, good frick luck, right? I mean, in all seriousness. But by making this list in the way that I'm making it, you can take these guys that fall from 39 to 30, and you can assess educated guesses based on where they are in their developmental and project your 40 homer guys. Okay? So, 30 plus homers. How many of you guys think? How many players do you guys think get 30 homers? It's a lot. It's more. Yeah. 52, Andrea. So, a lot more had 30 plus, right? It's about finding those guys with this safe floor and the potential to go up to that elite category. So again, we're setting our bar here. But I think it's important to have a vision. And that's what this is all about. So, let's talk about these guys. I'm going to run down through these guys. We're going to talk about it from the perspective of potential, right? And what we're basing that off of, how old they are, the improvement they've shown over their past, the adding or subtracting to the chemistry and makeup around them. And we're going to start to form these educated guesses based upon real data that we have, okay? This is the fun part. So the first guy on this list, Pete Alonso, 53 homers. His ADP is 27.4. That puts him right around the beginning of the 3rd round. I think Alonso regresses this year. I think big league pitching adapts back to him. I still think he has a really good year. But I don't think 53 homers is repeatable this year for Pete Alonso. That said, I will take every day of the week 40 homers and a 583 slug. You gotta love those numbers out of that guy. And I think that's a safe floor for him. But I think expecting 53 homers out of Peter Alonso is a stretch. Just my take. Number 2 on this guy, here's a guy, Eugenio Suarez, 49 homers, 64.4 ADP. What's not to like about Suarez? He's in one of the most hitter-friendly parks in the majors. He's established that he can do it. Over the past 2 or 3 years, he has been a steady force. And the kicker of all of it is, they've surrounded him with talent, right? He's shown, he's gone from 26 to 34 to 49, and at just 28 years old, I think Suarez has 50 plus. Now, I know I'm projecting just a scotch. I know 49 homers is tough to replicate. How many of y'all been to the Great American Ballpark in the summer? I have. That ball flies. So, to say that 49 homers is a good middle ground for Suarez, I think is safe. He could hit 55 homers. He's still a young guy. He's comfortable where he is. Again, at 64, it is great, J.R. Matz. I love it. It's one of my favorite places to go. That and PNC Park are very similar. And I love going to games at both of those parks. Again, at 64, you're talking about a sixth round pick in a traditional 12-team draft. That's tremendous value. 50 homers in the 6th round? It's amazing, right? The swimming pool injury. That's fair. But I don't know. I remember being cautious about Matt Olson, right? And that's the thing. Sometimes it is what it is. Young people are resilient, right? So that's a fair point, Lenny. Again, in the 5th round, you're drafting the potential of a 1st or 2nd round value, though, right? If he hits 50 homers, I mean, look, again, there's a touch of risk there. How about this next guy? This next guy's riddled. Some of these guys you have to take a chance on, though, especially when you're breaking it down this way, right? How about Jorge Soler at 48 homers? His ADP is 79.6, guys. You're talking about possibility of getting, and again, this is another guy. Yes, he's a risk because of his injury, right? He's not put together but one full season. But guys, I mean, again, it's one of those, it's a risk you can take, right? Especially if you play him well at the back end of the draft, you can take risks on, and they're not big. It's just a calculated risk because yes, Soler's had some bad luck. But guys, there's not a ballpark in the world that can hold this guy. All he has to do is stay healthy. He's but 27 years old. It seems like he's been around forever, but damn, he's still young, right? He made 48 homers look easy last year, guys. Again, and as an 80 ADP, I'm just doing off the top of my head here. You're talking about a 7th or 8th round pick. That's an extreme value if he pans out. You're just risking a middle round pick, right? So if you're setting your draft board, don't you bump him up a few? It makes sense to do it that way, right? If you could get a chance at 50 homers in the 7th round, don't you take that? I know I do. Gonna scan through these next guys. Cody Bellinger, 47 homers, 4 ADP. Trout, 45, 2 ADP. Yelich, 44, 3 ADP. Bregman, 41, 10 ADP. Arenado, 41. Acuna, 41. Again, I'm skimming over these guys because really we're talking about value here. Those are all 1st round picks. So, it accentuates my point though, right? We're talking about home run leaders from last year, real hard, solid stats. And the first 3 guys on that list aren't 1st round picks. Do you think there's value in doing this exercise?